Here we go again. Oh no, the Bitcoin bear market is starting, right? Bitcoin is dumping, panic is flooding on Twitter, and everybody is calling the top. But before you join the doomsday choir, it's very important we look at this chart. This is the Bullrun support trend line, which has marked every major leg up and vertical move for Bitcoin. The red arrows are identifying rejection points, and the green arrows are identifying turning the previous trend of resistance into support before next vertical moves. And guess what? Bitcoin has once again tapped onto this vertical trend line. So the big question is the bear market starting? Now, I would honestly say not so fast. This is where markets reset, not where they die. Now, before we head into the higher time frame analysis, there is some incredibly bullish news on the macro I would like to cover, which brings us over to Cathie Wood's ARK Invest. They just bought another 550,000 of ETH Treasury Company Bitmine shares and also topped up their own BTC ETF shares by 43,500. ARK Invest is loading up their rocket ship. Coming over to our next piece of macro news, the most popular, Ethereum wallet with 30 million users, MetaMask, officially adopts the Bitcoin blockchain. In simple terminology, this is giving the entire crypto retail crowd instant Bitcoin access to 30 million MetaMask users. Absolutely huge. Now, coming over to MSTR, they have recently bought 21,000 Bitcoin in December so far and look like they are targeting 700,000 Bitcoin. This is one company moving like a digital central bank. Massive news for MSTR as they accumulate. Now, another piece of macro information, 14 of the top 25 US banks are now building Bitcoin products. So this is not adoption, it's purely integration. Now, with this macro firepower, let's head over to our first macro fractal, analyzing the Bitcoin weekly levels. Now, as expected, we have seen rejection from the red supply block, and at this moment in time, Bitcoin currently trades at $87,000. We do have imminent support on this black trend line, which is where Bitcoin's been holding for the last sort of 4 weeks. However, if we do start closing below, then it is likely that we start retracing back down to these lows and fill in the wick from April of 2025, which currently sits at $75,000. Now, if Bitcoin holds this line and does retrace to such territory, this confirms we're still in a correction, not necessarily a reversal. The real danger actually lies in coming back into this massive demand zone, which is the previous levels of support from 2024 heading into 2025. So as we speak, this has not occurred yet. And as we enter into this dangerous territory, this is still a correction, not a reversal, which leads us onto our Bitcoin daily chart. Now, Bitcoin was in this ascending level of resistance and support for the last few weeks, but we have ultimately lost this level of support and seen a wick rejection, which could be paving way for a path back down to fill in the initial wick from early November. Once again, this just screams a potential correction to fill in the missing wick, not a reversal. So this isn't free fall, this is not collapse, this is just the structure unfolding as the chart suggests, which leads us onto our 4-hour time frame. Now, this is very interesting because at this moment in time, it's a massive battleground. The favor for the bulls is to hold this demand zone where we're seeing a good bounce and to initially push back into supply in the 90K territory. However, if we do start rolling over and coming back into this demand block on the LTFs and we start losing the support roughly at 85K, then this is the bearish scenario where we could see a rejection, a loss of support, and initially coming back down to the lows from early December. Right now, the battleground is a fair, even battle. We have imminent demand in the 86K territory below, which is the bull's favor. But if we do lose it, then the bears may gain the upper hand in the short term. This is a simple decision zone. We react, we do not predict. Now, heading over to our last chart of the day, this is the Bitcoin 2-hour time frame, and it's a very clean chart. As of the last 24 hours, Bitcoin has found relief in our lower time frame demand block, which sits at $84,000 and the lows from the 1st of December. Now, the bullish path, and for the bulls to take control here, what we need to see is higher low formations and a push up into our first imminent supply block, which sits at $90,000. Now, if we do get the push and the bulls can retain and hold structure above this supply block, then momentum is likely building and we could see a push up towards our second most important resistance block, or supply block as you would say, and this sits in the 91 to 93k territory. If the bulls do reclaim both of these supply blocks, then this is pointing in favor of a massive vertical move for Bitcoin. Lots of work to do, but the levels to obtain are in front of us. Now, if we do see a rollover and we actually fail to push up into these supply blocks, the case for the bears here is resorting back down into the demand and losing it. Now, if we do lose the imminent demand, then the likelihood is that we resort back down to the lows from late November in the 82k territory. This is pure level-to-level trading. No guessing, no emotions, just structure. So here's actually what you need to know. The Bitcoin bear market is not starting. In fact, Bitcoin is holding a previous trend line of resistance as support, and this is typically where rallies begin. We have Cathie Wood's ARK Invest buying 550,000 ETH treasury company Bitmine shares and topping up their own bag of BTC ETF shares by 43,000 Bitcoin. We have the most popular Ethereum wallet, MetaMask, adopting Bitcoin blockchain with 30 million user instant access. We have MicroStrategy purchasing 21,000 Bitcoin in December, going for a 700,000 total. We have 25 of the top US banks building Bitcoin products. Massive news. The higher time frame points to Bitcoin's weekly imminent support levels at 87k, with midterm support needing to hold at $74,000 if it's lost. The daily time frame points to a ascending or rising wedge structure breakdown, bringing Bitcoin likely down towards the sort of 80k territory to fill in the late November wick. The 4-hour time frame is a macro compression picture where there is ultimately a range between demand and supply above, and the 2-hour time frame is a case both for the bears and for the bulls, with two imminent supply zones above to break through for momentum to return for vertical moves. And if we fail, then we are likely to resort back down to the lows from late November at the 82k territory. Higher time frames are showing a controlled pullback, not a collapse. The 4-hour and 2-hour low TF timeframes have demand in the 84k territory, but supply waiting above between 90 to 93k. So the key things to take away from today's content is to stay logical, stay calm, trade the levels, not necessarily the fear on the timeline. Now, if you would like to support the channel, I have attached the appropriate links below for the platform we use to trade, where you can also sign up and get free bonuses. Of course, it's optional and completely up to you, but thank you for being here nonetheless. Until next time.